The stars had never looked so quiet. From Earth's orbit, the diplomatic fleet hovered like silver ghosts, a dozen alien vessels, each one an architectural marvel. Their designs ranged from crystal wings shimmering in solar light to obsidian orbs pulsing with unknown energy. They weren't here for war, not this time. They had come in peace to offer something they believed no species would refuse. But Earth didn't blink. The Alliance had expected fear, awe, maybe desperation. What they got instead was silence. Cold, measured human silence. Commander Threx of the Zelani delegation stood inside his ship's viewing chamber. Watching Earth rotate below, he clicked his mandibles nervously, his long fingers tapping against the control panel. They're not responding. This is the third transmission unanswered. From the corner, an officer from the Vikar Collective, thin and glimmering with biometallic skin, hissed. They're stalling, waiting for leverage. They're primitives, a third voice added. This one gruffer from the Horno. Ambassador. Always slow, still trapped by their own arrogance. No one noticed the human diplomat walking in until he spoke. We heard all of that, the man said, calmly straightening his plain dark suit. No badges, no medals, just a subtle earth pin on his collar. His tone was even, but there was steel behind his eyes. And you're wrong on every point. The room fell silent, even among species that didn't breathe air. Tension could be felt. I'm not here to be impressed by your fleets, the human continued. And Earth isn't here to beg for your scraps. Three stepped forward quickly. Ambassador, with respect, the Galactic Alliance extends this invitation for mutual benefit, shared technology, open trade routes, defense against outer threats. You would be protected. The human tilted his head. Protected from what? There was a pause, then a fourth voice, mechanical and echoing, an AI envoy from the Darren Syndicate, answered. From extinction. The human smiled, not politely, not warmly, but the kind of smile that carried history. You think we made it this far just to let someone else protect us? Threx was trying to remain diplomatic. You are a young species. Your planet only achieved spaceflight within the last 2 centuries. You don't fully understand what lies beyond your system. You're right, the human said. We don't understand all of it, but what we do understand is this: every great empire that offered peace eventually demanded obedience. We've read enough of our own history to recognize the pattern. The Vikar officer flicked its luminous eyes toward him. You insult the Alliance. No, the human said. I just don't trust it. He stepped forward and placed a small chip on the table in the center of the room. This is Earth's final response. You can broadcast it galaxywide if you want. We're not joining, not now, not under your terms, not ever if it means giving up our right to decide for ourselves. The Hoach ambassador snarled. You'd isolate your species over pride. No, he replied, we'd rather struggle and stay free than thrive under someone else's leash. That was the last word spoken in the chamber. The message went viral across the stars within the hour. The headline echoed from system to system. Galactic leaders shocked as humanity rejects Alliance offer. The reactions were instant. Some species laughed, others were offended. A few admired the boldness, secretly wishing they'd done the same, but no one, not even the oldest civilizations, expected it, because for the first time in thousands of years, a species had said no to the most powerful organization in the known universe. And Earth didn't care who it offended. Back on the surface in a quiet command bunker buried beneath the Colorado Mountains, the human ambassador removed his jacket and sat beside a woman, monitoring dozens of screens. How bad is it? He asked. She shrugged. Half the galaxy thinks we're suicidal. The other half thinks we're insane. And us, we think it's about time someone said it. He looked at the monitor, showing 1,000 alien voices, screaming into the void of space, demanding answers, and he whispered, "Let them talk." The next 24 hours after Earth's declaration felt like a cosmic aftershock. Out in the void, the Alliance's diplomatic fleet did not retreat. Their ships hung in orbit like vultures in limbo, unwilling to back down but too stunned to move forward. On every Alliance news feed, from the twin moons of Vera Khan to the ice colonies on Deland Prime, a single word echoed again and again: rejected. Never before in recorded galactic history had a species denied the Alliance. Not one especially. Not a species as young, as unpredictable, and as human. The humans didn't gloat publicly. There were no parades, no broadcasted speeches from world leaders, just silence, calculated, deliberate silence. But inside Earth's deep space command centers, there was anything but peace. Inside the subterranean complex beneath Colorado's mountains, things were tense, not from fear, not exactly, but from the sheer weight of what had just happened. The human ambassador who delivered the final message, known internally only as Wells, stood before a war room of top strategists, advisors, and analysts. Every wall was a screen. Every screen flickered with real-time reactions from every known corner of the galaxy. 57 independent systems are watching us now, said a data analyst. 17 are curious, 12 are outraged, 4 are considering following our lead. General Nari, head of Earth's planetary defense grid, leaned forward, her voice calm but edged with caution. And the rest, they're waiting, the analyst replied. Some for us to be punished, others for us to make a mistake. Wells exhaled slowly and looked at the screen showing the orbiting alien vessels. They're not leaving, no, General Nari said, because they don't know what to do when someone doesn't kneel. One of the intelligence officers turned. We have intercepts from Alliance channels. They're arguing. The KVC think we've insulted the whole structure. They Vicar want to escalate diplomatically. But the Hoch, they're calling for a demonstration, a warning. Wells narrowed his eyes. They want to intimidate us. Correct. There was silence in the room. 1,000 possibilities ran like currents beneath the surface of every mind. Earth had made its move, its statement. But statements came with consequences, and humans knew this better than most. Nari stood and walked toward the central table. Her fingers tapped on a console, bringing up a set of tactical overlays. We can't outgun the Alliance, she said. Plainly, not directly. Their fleet is still generations ahead of us in certain aspects, but they're not unified. They've grown soft, comfortable. They assume compliance. Wells nodded. And if we show them that resistance doesn't mean chaos, that defiance can be stable, we might chain the balance or make ourselves the target. Someone muttered from the side. He turned, voice low. We were already the target. That's what they won't admit. He wasn't wrong. For all the talk of peace and Prosperity the Alliance hadn't reached. Out to Earth for kindness. They wanted Earth in the fold because Earth was advancing fast and too independently. Humans weren't asking for technology, they were inventing their own. They weren't begging for aid. They were building defenses, and perhaps, worst of all, they weren't impressed. The Alliance was used to all Earth had given them suspicion. Outside in orbit something changed. Single Hoach cruiser powered its engines, not weapons but close. Message broadcast on open frequencies. Flooded human comms. This is a formal call to compliance. The deep voice boomed. You have 72 Earth hours to reconsider. The Alliance does not threaten, it corrects. General Nari's eyes didn't move from the screen. That's a threat, just sugar-coated. Wells stood still, his hands clasped behind his back. We won't give them what they want. They want fear, she replied. He nodded. So we'll give them calculation. Back in orbit, the Huck ship continued its passive demonstration, lowering its altitude slightly, pulsing with energy. A predator circling without striking. Across Earth, civilian chatter began to shift. Most people hadn't been told the full truth. All they knew was Earth said no, and now strange ships lingered above their skies. Some were afraid, some were proud, a few dangerously wanted to fight. In the quiet neighborhoods of cities, and the spires of the mega archies, debates raged. Why did we turn them down? What are they going to do to us? Can we even stop them? But beneath all of it, something else was growing, a pulse, a rhythm, the feeling of sovereignty. Real, unapologetic sovereignty. For the first time in planetary history, one flag, one planet, one voice. It was fragile and it was precious, and it was being watched. On the third day, just before the 72-hour deadline, Wells received a private message from an unexpected source. It wasn't an Alliance channel. It wasn't even encrypted. The message came from a neutral moon, unaffiliated with the Alliance, known for being a haven for exiles, thinkers, outcasts. It read, they tried to break us too. We didn't have the spine to resist. You just might. We're listening. Wells stared at the message for a long time before forwarding it to the Strategic Council. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. Earth's resistance was being noticed, and not just by enemies. That night, a secret meeting was held aboard one of Earth's orbital defense platforms. Representatives from 7 unaligned species, each traveling under stealth, gathered in a sealed chamber. No press, no broadcasts. They came not as allies, not yet, but as observers. We were told your kind were reckless, said a tall, owlied being from the Drownthie worlds, that you would burn your own future for pride. Wells faced them evenly. That's what they always say when you refuse to kneel. The Drownthie didn't smile, but there was a flicker of something in their expression. Interest, perhaps. A reptilian envoy from the car leaned forward. If the Alliance moves on you, will you stand? Yes, even if it costs you everything. Wells didn't blink. Freedom always costs something, but slavery costs more. That was the moment it happened. Subtle shift. Invisible but undeniable. One of the envoys, a soft-bodied being from the etheric cloud worlds, turned to the others. They offered our worlds peace too, then bled our resources for a century. We're still recovering. The reptilian car nodded. We followed their rules. They never followed ours. We watched them terraform a moon against Its native inhabitants' wishes, said. Another, they called it optimization. Wells let the silence settle, and then he said quietly, we didn't reject the alliance just for ourselves. We did it because someone needed to say no. Another pause, the Danthe spoke again. If you lead this resistance, where would it go? Not toward war, Wells said, but toward choice. No single council should decide the fate of 1,000 civilizations. That's not peace. That's monopoly. The room went quiet again. Then one by one the envoys began to nod. Not a single treaty was signed, no formal alliances made, but the seed had been planted. Earth was no longer alone. Down on the surface, the global mood had changed. People weren't waiting for answers anymore. They were organizing, preparing, innovating. Young minds began joining new science initiatives focused on independent space tech. Underground artists painted murals of Earth breaking its chains. Protesters marched in favor of the refusal, not against it. Even critics, those who once doubted humanity's path, were forced to admit something had changed. Earth wasn't a fractured place anymore. It was becoming dangerous, not because of weapons, but because it had found unity. The Alliance didn't know how to handle that. Empires are good at crushing armies. They're terrible at fighting ideas, and the idea of Earth, stubborn, untamed, unbowed, was beginning to spread. In the final hours of the deadline, the Hoche cruiser powered its weapons, just a fraction, just enough to threaten. They sent a final message. This is your last chance. Comply or we demonstrate our strength. Earth replied with a single, unencrypted transmission. We've seen strength. We've built our own. Come and see if it's enough. That was not a bluff. Earth had been preparing not for domination but for survival. From the deserts of Mars colonies to the oceans of Europa bases, humanity had quietly developed tech the Alliance hadn't expected. Not superior, but unpredictable, adaptive. Human AI systems didn't follow conventional logic trees. They're military. Drones weren't elegant, but they were ruthless. Their tactics didn't rely on overwhelming force, but on asymmetric chaos. And most terrifying of all, humans learned fast. The Alliance didn't fire. They couldn't, because the moment they did, they would confirm what every unaligned world already suspected, that the Alliance required obedience, not peace. They left quietly. Slowly, one by one, the ships broke orbit and turned their engines toward deep space. No message, no admission of defeat, but Earth knew, and the galaxy felt the aftershocks. It wasn't a victory in the traditional sense. No medals, no planets conquered, no enemies slain, but it was something bigger. Refusal, a defiant no that echoed across the stars, and somewhere far beyond the reach of Earth's telescopes, in forgotten parts of the galaxy, others whispered, maybe we can say no too. It started with a broadcast, just one, from a mining colony on the edge of the Corin Drift, where the workers lived under thick domes and even thicker rules. Someone hacked into the planetary announcement system and played Earth's message on loop. We've seen strength. We've built our own. Come and see if it's enough. It played for hours before the signal was cut. The next day, over 2,000 workers refused to report for duty. They didn't riot. They didn't sabotage the facility. They just stopped. They stood in place, shoulder to shoulder, in their pressure suits, silent beneath the glass. Sky, it was the beginning, they weren't. Humans, not even close, the workers were. Jiarlin, a soft-skinned, multi-limbed race. Known for compliance, peaceful, passive. For over a century, they'd worked under Alliance regulation, their atmosphere had been slowly siphoned to serve a nearby energy colony. No one had ever resisted until now. The Alliance dispatched enforcers within a day, but when the ships arrived, the workers didn't scatter. They linked arms, and someone no one knew who had painted a phrase across the largest dome in crude red letters. One planet said no. The image went viral. Earth didn't claim credit, but it didn't need to. The galaxy already knew. Back on Earth, Wells was reviewing a list of intercepted transmissions when the door to his office hissed open. General Nari entered without a word and dropped a thick file onto his desk. He raised an eyebrow. What am I looking at? Spontaneous uprisings, she said. Small scale across 15 Alliance sectors. Started within the last 48 hours. He opened the file. Every page was a report from a different planet. Protests on in Ocean World, a refused shipment on a trading moon, a rogue speech from a student at an Alliance university now marked for disciplinary isolation. All of them are quoting us, she said. Quietly. Wells rubbed his face, weary but sharp. We didn't ask them to, we didn't need to, she replied. You were right, someone just had to say it first. He looked up, eyes darker than usual, and now they'll blame us for everything. Let them, she sat down opposite him. We're already the enemy in their eyes. Might as well be the one they're afraid of. He didn't respond for a moment. The weight of it hung between them. They hadn't started a war, but something more dangerous, something more unpredictable had begun. An idea was spreading, and ideas didn't die easy. In the core of the Alliance's capital, a council of 12 gathered in an obsidian hall, lit only by hovering crystals. The room was ancient, built before most of their member species even discovered electricity. It was where wars had been declared, treaties signed, civilizations erased. The council now faced a new problem. Earth. This was supposed to be a formality, said Counselor Serve, her voice a soft chime of sound waves instead of speech. We underestimated their will. We didn't underestimate, growled a Harrow general seated at the far end. We indulged. We thought they would fall in line like the others. They have not, said a third voice, cold and electronic. And now others question us. They do more than question, muttered a member of the Drex species whose body shimmered like liquid silver. They copy. The word copy echoed strangely in the hall. It wasn't just a threat, it was insult. The Alliance was built on control, not violent, not openly, but carefully woven through trade, culture, science, and dependence. Earth hadn't just rejected the Alliance, it had exposed the method. How do we proceed? Sir asked finally. There was silence, then the Horno general spoke again. We isolate them. No trade, no passage, cut their communications, block their ships at every port. We make them vanish. That will make them martyrs, someone said. The general snarled. They already are. The vote was taken unanimous. Earth was to be sanctioned, effective immediately. The directive was simple. Let them choke on their pride. Wells got the news 2 days later. No more access to interstellar trade networks, no diplomatic clearance. Any human ship entering Alliance controlled Space would be turned away or detained. Earth had been excommunicated. He stood on a balcony in the UN Global Embassy Tower overlooking a city that had once fought itself in countless ways. Now it was united, not in peace maybe, but in clarity. General Nari joined him, reading the sanction list on her handheld. They cut everything, he nodded. Expected. You think they'll hold back? He looked out across the skyline. Autonomous skimmers zipped between towers and sky farms, harvested solar light by the terawatt. No, he said, they'll wait until the sanctions hurt. Then they'll offer mercy, but not without a price. Compliance, he nodded again, always the same price. But Earth had already begun adapting. Underground inventors, private industries, rogue AI labs, all had begun the same work, making sure Earth could stand alone. The price of rejection was high, but the price of surrender was higher, and not everyone in the galaxy supported the sanctions. From deep space, a smuggler known only as Core began routing unmarked supply ships toward Earth under false transponders. He wasn't human. He had never even set foot on Earth, but he had once watched his own planet forced into alliance treaties that bled its mineral-rich crust dry. Core knew a good rebellion when he saw one. He wasn't the only one. A small guild of traders from the Arakai system began offering black market exchanges to Earth scientists in secret information. For data, tech for tech, they called it. The silent trade on the outer moons of Audrus Prime, student radicals painted Earth's symbol, a rising sun, over a chain on university walls. The administration tried to erase it. The next day, 1,000 more appeared. Across the stars, the Alliance watched and worried because Earth hadn't fired a shot, hadn't taken a world, hadn't destroyed a fleet. All it did was say no, and that somehow was far more dangerous. 3 weeks after the sanctions, Wells received a private message again, this time from a source calling itself a voice from the shadows. He opened it in a secure room alone. The message was short. They see what you're doing. You won't be allowed to keep doing it for long. They're coming, not all at once, but soon. One incident, one crisis, then they'll have their excuse. Wells didn't flinch. He knew this was always the play. Create pressure. Wait for the target to misstep, then strike in the name of stability. But what they didn't understand was this. Earth wasn't trying to survive the old way. It wasn't playing their game anymore. It was rewriting the rules. He sent a reply, encrypted and untraceable. Let them come. We've already lit the match. Even if they kill us, the fire spreads. They picked Mars, not Earth, not Luna, not one of the scattered outer listening posts. Mars was far enough to avoid a full-scale retaliation, but close enough to make a point. It wasn't an act of war. Not officially, but everyone watching knew what it was. The Alliance had grown tired of waiting. The colony was called Red Haven, one of the first permanent human settlements outside Earth. 2 domes, 1 underground hydroponic network, and just over 38,000 people, mostly engineers, researchers, and second-gen Martian-born families. They lived quiet lives. They weren't soldiers. They weren't politicians. They were soft targets. It happened fast. A merchant vessel broadcasting Alliance colors entered Mars orbit. It claimed engine failure, requested temporary landing clearance for repairs. Red Haven's governor, unaware of anything unusual, granted it the moment it landed. 12 Alliance operatives stepped out, not diplomats, not technicians, armed, armored, trained. Within 6 minutes, Red Haven Central comm tower was under their control. Broadcasts went dark, the dome went silent. Earth only found out when a short emergency ping escaped through a backup channel before it was cut, just one word: occupied. The meeting room on Earth felt like it was vibrating with heat. General Nari was already on her feet when Wells entered, throwing up satellite images and hacked feeds from Red Haven onto the wall. We've confirmed their Alliance Black Echo operatives, full authorization, no insignia, no traceable ID. That ship was a decoy. Casualties? Wells asked, voice cold. Minimal, she replied. No one's been killed yet, but they've taken over water regulation, external comms, and transport. The people are trapped. Wells stared at the screen. They're testing us, he said. They want to know if we'll retaliate. Someone else in the room shifted uncomfortably. We can't fight the Alliance in open war. Wells didn't turn his head. They're already fighting us. This is how it starts, not with invasions, but with excuses, small moves, targeted ones, measured enough to avoid backlash from the galactic press, but brutal enough to send a message. He walked to the center of the room. If we let this stand, we've already lost. General Nari looked at him. We have a team ready. Silent entry, no explosions, no broadcasts. We can extract our people quietly. Wells nodded slowly. And if they resist, her eyes darkened. Then we make sure the galaxy sees who draws blood first. In the dust storm, red skies above Mars, Earth's stealth shuttle drifted toward the colony under the radar, painted in dull gray, silent engines barely humming. It carried 6 operatives, hand-picked, trained for scenarios like this. They didn't wear flags, didn't speak unless necessary. Their mission was clear: secure Red Haven's governor, re-establish communication, evacuate if possible, defend if necessary. The lead operative, a woman known only by her call sign, Shade, crouched at the shuttle's edge as it made final descent. Her voice came through in a whisper: touchdown in 60. Visuals show perimeter drones disabled. No movement near the primary corridor. Her second, a broad-shouldered man with quiet eyes, nodded. They're not expecting pushback. Shade smiled without warmth. They will. The shuttle landed like a feather. Within seconds, the team had breached secondary airlock into the colony's old maintenance tunnel. The passage smelled like metal and stale air, but Red Haven was silent, too silent. They moved fast. 2 minutes in, they found the first camera, Alliance tech, freshly installed. Shade shot it clean through. Inside the dome's central hall, the Black Echo commander, an angular, pale-skinned being with 3 rigged eyes, monitored the silent feeds. One camera blinked out. He leaned back slowly. They're coming. His second in command, a stocky humanoid with slick silver-plated armor, tilted his head. Already. They wouldn't let this stand, not if their pride's worth anything. Commander smiled faintly. Let's see how much it costs them. Shade's team reached the control core within 12 minutes. Red Haven's security system had been bypassed but not disabled. The Alliance hadn't destroyed it. They just assumed it wouldn't be used again. They were wrong. With 3 keystrokes, Shade's tech specialist re-engaged the local override. Red Haven's lights flickered A second later, the entire dome blared. With a recorded voice, evacuation. Protocol disengaged, defense systems online. And then came the sound everyone had been waiting for, gunfire. The Alliance had assumed Earth would stay silent. They assumed wrong. The firefight lasted 17 minutes, silent, brutal, efficient. The human operatives didn't carry heavy weapons, but they didn't need to. Their gear was engineered for asymmetrical warfare, magnetic charges that stuck to alloy armor, adaptive smoke that jammed visuals, low-frequency shock pulses that overloaded enemy nervous systems. Shade herself moved like a ghost, quiet, focused, never missing a shot. By the end, 8 of the 12 Alliance operatives were incapacitated. 3 more were retreating. 1 surrendered. The humans didn't kill them. That would have been too easy. Instead, Shade activated the colony's wideband broadcast system. For the first time in days, Red Haven's signal reached the galaxy, a single feed, no edits, no spin, just the truth. It showed Red Haven's people huddled together, scared, unarmed, trapped. It showed the Alliance operatives with weapons raised inside a civilian dome. And then it showed something else, human operatives, unmarked, refusing to execute their captives, offering them medical treatment and escort out of the dome. Shade stepped in front of the camera. She didn't speak for long. We are not aggressors. We are not terrorists. We are not property. Earth stands, and if we fall, we fall standing. You decide what that means for you. Then she shut the feed off. The galactic reaction was instantaneous. The Alliance tried to suppress the footage but failed. Too many neutral channels had picked it up. Too many independent systems were already watching Earth's every move. And what they saw now didn't look like chaos. It looked like control, calculated, disciplined, ethical. The Alliance's credibility cracked. On the trade moons of Karen 7, a dozen merchants refused to pay Alliance tariffs for the first time in decades. If Earth can fight back, one of them said, maybe we can bargain better on a luxury planet once favored by Alliance diplomats. Protesters marched through the streets wearing masks made to look like Shade's helmet. And on the underground network called Vox Unbound, millions of beings watched the Red Haven feed and whispered the same word again and again: human, not as an insult, not as a joke, as a warning. Back at the Earth Embassy, Wells watched the fallout unfold across a dozen screens. General Nari stood beside him. They'll have to respond now, he nodded. Yes. But now every move they make will be watched closely. They could still crush us, she said. Wells didn't deny it. Of course they have the firepower. Then why haven't they used it? He turned to her. Because the one thing they fear more than rebellion. He tapped the screen showing a peaceful protest on a distant moon. Hundreds of non-human civilians holding signs that said "Let Earth stand" is losing control. 3 weeks after the Red Haven incident, Earth stood taller than ever. The footage of Shade and her team rescuing the colony had reached every corner of the known galaxy. New graffiti began to appear across the walls of oppressed settlements, backwater moons, and industrial cities. A silhouette of a lone figure standing with arms crossed beneath a shattered Alliance crest. It didn't say victory. It didn't need to. Defiance had become a brand. But what no one realized not yet was that the Alliance was already shifting its strategy. They didn't want another Mars It had made Earth look righteous, strong, united, so the alliance changed. The game from firepower to subversion, from war to whispers. The first signs were small in an orbital research station called Halo 9, one of Earth's most important data hubs, an artificial intelligence unit responsible for analyzing foreign data signatures. Suddenly rerouted a feed. It was a minor change, a few protocols rerouted through an encrypted relay node outside Sol's system. No one noticed, not until 2 weeks later, when blueprints of Earth's experimental defense satellites were leaked to a pirate network operating under Alliance jurisdiction. By the time engineers traced the breach, the damage was done. Earth's secret satellite defense specs had been sold. The internal investigation revealed something worse. The breach hadn't come from outside, it had come from a human. Her name was Sarah Cade, mid-level data engineer, flawless record, clean background, no family ties to the Alliance, no financial red flags. She had passed every loyalty test, and yet she had spent 5 months secretly feeding encrypted packets to an off-world handler captured during questioning. Sarah showed no remorse, only cold, tired eyes. Wells reviewed the interrogation footage. Personally, you don't understand, she said in a whisper. They didn't threaten me, they didn't bribe me, they convinced me. Convinced you of what? The investigator asked. That Earth is walking into a war it can't win, that it's better to surrender now while there's still something left to save. Wells shut the footage off. He stared at the black screen for a long time. She wasn't broken, he said quietly to Nari. She believed. Nari crossed her arms. How do you make someone believe they're doing the right thing by betraying their home? Wells didn't answer right away, but he knew the answer. Doubt. The Alliance had begun a new campaign. Not with weapons, but with words. In isolated colonies, anonymous messages began appearing in public terminals. Earth's leaders are hiding the cost. Ask yourself, what have you really gained from saying no? How many of your children will die for someone else's pride? On trade networks, rumors were seeded. Earth's tech isn't sustainable without Alliance infrastructure. Their independence is fake. They're just shifting who controls them. Their leaders are preparing for war, not peace. But worst of all, inside Earth's own system, a message surfaced claiming to be from inside the Global Command Council. I supported the resistance at first. I believed in what we stood for. But we're being led by people who want chaos, not freedom. This isn't about independence. It's about power. The message was signed anonymously, traced through dozens of false leads, no confirmed source, but it spread like fire. In just 6 days, support for Earth's independence among civilians dropped by 12%. Public trust in Earth's united leadership wavered. People didn't panic, they hesitated. And that hesitation was exactly what the Alliance had been waiting for. Meanwhile, in the far orbit station called Relay Arc, a secret meeting took place between two species that had never previously aligned. The Danthi, ancient, reclusive, once neutral, now spoke quietly with the Alliance's unofficial delegate. We've watched long enough, said the Dranthi speaker, its voice trembling, hummed like wind over glass. Your tactics have changed. The delegate didn't deny it. The humans cannot be beaten with violence, but they can be shown their limits. The Danthi hesitated. You may succeed, or you may push them further. They are Clever, the delegate agreed, but they are still young, and young species can be broken. Back on Earth, things were shifting. Inside the main government center, the Unified Earth Assembly, the cracks were becoming harder to ignore. Representatives from various Earth sectors began asking sharper questions. In public sessions, why aren't we seeking new allies? Are we really prepared to stand alone forever? Shouldn't we open dialogue with the softer factions within the alliance? Is refusing the alliance worth risking global infrastructure collapse? Wells sat at the end of the council table, quiet, watching. He didn't answer every question, not yet, but every time someone called for compromise, he marked their name, because compromise was the new language of surrender. General Nari met him in the corridor after the session. "They're not all traitors," she said, trying to be diplomatic. "No," he replied, just scared. "Maybe they have reason to be." Wells turned to her. "We knew this wouldn't be easy, but this," he gestured around them, "this isn't politics anymore, it's infection." Nari didn't argue. They both knew what came next. The alliance wasn't going to invade. It didn't need to. It just needed Earth to tear itself apart. And then the betrayal came. It was quiet enough that if it hadn't been for an internal mole, a loyal tech specialist buried deep inside Earth's Cyber Defense Division, they wouldn't have seen it coming. A secret override protocol hidden inside a weather monitoring system. It wasn't weather tech at all. It was a backdoor signal routed through an artificial satellite disguised as a deep space telescope. When activated, it would give the Alliance access to every orbital defense drone Earth had launched. In the last year, a kill switch, one signal, and Earth's entire upper atmosphere security grid would fall. Blind, the mole, a man named Island, barely 25, caught the anomaly during a routine scan. He flagged it bypassed protocol, brought it directly to General Nari's private channel. They shut the node down with seconds to spare. The code origin, a division inside Earth's own defense ministry, but not one controlled by Earth. The team traced it back, a mid-ranking official, long trusted, connected to trade negotiations with neutral systems, clean record. She was gone, vanished from her residence just days before her last recorded coordinates. A ship bound for a neutral moon rumored to house Alliance intelligence fronts. Wells stood in silence as the report played out on the screen. Nari waited for him to speak. He didn't. He just turned and walked away. 2 days later, he addressed the planet. No filters, no edits, just him standing in front of Earth's crest. "They tried weapons, we stood. They tried silence, we spoke. Now they try shadows. Now they want us to fight each other, to doubt, to weaken. But I will tell you this: Earth did not come this far to break from the inside. We have been broken before, by war, by division, by greed, but we learned, and now we stand. Not as factions, not as nations, not as colonies, but as one." He paused, then leaned in slightly. "The next phase won't be easy. It won't be clean, but history will ask one question: did we belong to ourselves? And I want our answer to be yes, even when it cost us everything." The message aired across Earth, across Mars, across every outpost and ship still flying the Earth crest, but more importantly, it was picked up outside Earth's borders, on rogue channels, on restricted trade routes, on pirate radio waves in distant Systems, the message echoed and far. Away in the floating city of Alria. Silent rebellion of Alliance subjects. Replayed the footage again and again. One of them turned to the others and said, "They may fall, but they'll fall. As humans, what are we?" They called themselves the Verican. To most of the galaxy, the Verican were myth, a rumor passed between star captains and smugglers, a name spoken in low tones. They didn't belong to any alliance, didn't operate within any formal galactic borders. No one even knew where their home world was, if they had one. But they were real, and they had been watching. Wells received their message 2 weeks after the failed override attempt on Earth's defense satellites. It came through a hidden relay in the Kuiper Belt. A signal bounced through so many old Earth probes and defunct satellites that no AI could trace the origin. There was no image, no face, just a voice. Low comm, synthetic but not artificial. Your resistance has impressed many, but impression alone won't save you. We offer an alternative, not surrender, not war, something else. Meet us, one envoy. One of yours, no weapons, no surveillance. Our offer will not come. Again, Wells listened to it twice before saying a word. General Nari stood behind him, arms crossed. It could be a trap. Could be, Wells replied, but if it isn't, they never talk to outsiders. He nodded. Exactly. She narrowed her eyes. You're going. He didn't answer, but they both knew he would. The meeting was set in a neutral system, an abandoned mining station, orbiting a dead planet, long stripped of its resources. The place had no name anymore, just a code, DE-4714. Wells arrived alone, unarmed, aboard a small shuttle with no broadcasting signature before he even touched down. His ship's electronics were disabled by a remote signal. Lights dimmed, controls froze. They weren't asking permission. Inside the station, the silence was deep, enough to feel like pressure. Cold air whispered through cracked vents. Old machines groaned in their sleep. Then, from the shadows, they appeared, 3 of them, the Verican. They were humanoid but tall, unnaturally tall, clad in dark robes, threaded with veins of glowing blue. Their skin, where visible, looked like glass over metal, shimmering faintly. Their eyes were blank white, like planets with no sun. The tallest one stepped forward. "I am called Speaker, for your sake. Let's keep this simple." Wells didn't flinch. "I'm here, speak." Speaker nodded slowly. "Your defiance has weakened the Alliance more than you know, but defiance alone won't win. They've shifted strategies. Next comes economic suffocation, misinformation, false flag attacks designed to push you into rash retaliation. We know," Wells said. "You know, and yet you're losing," Speaker replied. Wells's face didn't move. "If you're offering insight, we already have enough analysts. We're offering technology," Speaker said. "But not what you're thinking, not weapons, not ships." "Then what?" The room darkened. Speaker raised one hand, and from his palm a sphere of light shimmered into the air. It expanded into a holographic image, a human face. Then another, then dozens, hundreds, all of them people Earth considered loyal, trusted, members of command centers, tech divisions, outreach stations, trade envoys, faces Wells knew. Every one of these individuals has been contacted, Speaker said. Some bribed, some threatened, others simply convinced. Wells' jaw tightened. "They're turning," he asked. "Some already have," Speaker said. "Others will." The images vanished. but we offer a firewall speaker. Continued, a technology that roots not just into networks but into behavior. A pattern recognition AI that can detect betrayal before it happens. It maps language, tone, microexpression. It predicts disloyalty. Wells went still. That sounds like mind policing. It's protection, speaker said. Your enemies are inside the walls now. You're bleeding slowly. This will stop it. At what cost? Speaker tilted his head. Only trust. Back on Earth, Wells returned without explaining much. He didn't tell the assembly everything, not about the AI, not about the offer, not yet. Only Nari was briefed. She looked at the data package the Veraric had given him and said what he was already thinking. This goes against everything we've stood for. Yes, and we're considering it. He stared out the window. If we lose from within, what we stood for won't matter. Nari said nothing. She didn't have to. They were both soldiers in a war where the bullets were ideas and ideas killed. Slowly, the first real betrayal came days later. A cargo vessel traveling from Earth to a neutral colony was intercepted by pirates. No defense alert was triggered. No transponders had been disabled because someone on Earth had turned off the tracking signal before the ship even launched. 18 crew were captured. 2 were killed. The rest were held for ransom by a gang known to operate under alliance tolerance. A blind eye turned in exchange for chaos in the right places. The traitor on Earth, a logistics manager, never flagged, never suspected until it was too late. Wells read the report in silence. This is going to keep happening, Nari said. They're not targeting our armies. They're targeting our confidence. He opened the data chip from the Verican and said quietly, we tested. The system was called Sentinel. Once activated, it ran silently in the background of secure networks, monitoring not for cyber threats but for patterns, behavioral drift, language irregularities, private communications, access logs, facial tension on internal video messages, all compiled, weighted, processed. It didn't accuse, it predicted. Within 5 days, Sentinel flagged 17 individuals across 5 departments. Most were minor, some were wrong, but 2 had already begun building back doors into Earth's communications relays. When confronted, one broke down crying, claimed they had been contacted by someone promising peace. All I had to do was look the other way, she said. Just once. Wells stood in the hallway afterward, fists clenched. This is what it's come to, he said to Nari. We don't just watch the stars now, we watch each other. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because the truth was simple. Earth was surviving, but it was starting to lose its soul in the process. The Verican contacted Wells again. You see the value now, speaker said. I see the result, Wells replied, but not the value. Speaker's voice didn't change. We offer the tools. You decide how clean your hands stay. Why are you helping us? A pause, because no one ever said no before. We want to see what happens if someone finishes the sentence. Wells stared at the static in the transmission. Are we your experiment? You're your own. We're just making sure it runs long enough to matter. Back on Earth, the Sentinel system continued its quiet work. Publicly, nothing had changed, but privately, trust inside Earth's command was growing thin. Everyone began speaking just a little more carefully, watching over shoulder. Conversations that once happened face to face began taking place Over encrypted text, people smiled less. Earth was still standing, but Unity was bleeding. Wells knew it, Nari knew it, but the worst part, it was working because the Alliance hadn't stopped. They had just gotten smarter. Public tragedy was all they needed now. One incident, one explosion, one scandal, enough to push Earth over the line. Wells met with the Council in private. No matter what happens next, he told them, we do not fracture, we do not lose ourselves. A pause, and we do not become what we're fighting. But as he left the room, he wasn't sure anyone believed him anymore. Not fully. Not even himself. It started with an explosion, one ship. One moment, it tore through orbit. Station Rixan 7th, a bustling hub near the Laris Trade Corridor, an old station but vital, a crossroads of 15 minor trade lanes, half of them maintained by Alliance ships, the other half by independent traders and neutral observers. Over 2,000 personnel worked there, a mix of species, many unaffiliated with the Alliance, living under a fragile agreement of neutrality. The blast cracked the station in half. Fire spiraled out into the black. Docked vessels were flung into one another like toys. Communication snapped within seconds. Of the 2,100 souls aboard, only 78 survived. It was the worst orbital disaster since the Dawnbreaker breach of 9003, and the first time Earth's name was directly connected to it, because they found a piece of wreckage, a shard of hull plating burned, twisted, nearly unrecognizable, but stamped with an unmistakable logo, the Earth Sovereignty crest. Wells heard about it while in a closed door meeting with General Nari and 2 Earth Assembly members. A junior officer interrupted, eyes wide, voice trembling, "Sir, you need to see this." Wells took the data pad. The footage played in real time, flaming debris drifting in orbit, screams on an emergency frequency, emergency lights flickering over bloodied bodies being pulled from broken corridors, and then the image, a burned panel with Earth's symbol floating in space. His heart didn't race, his jaw didn't clench. He simply watched, then said, "Whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing." Nari had already activated her uplink to Defense Intelligence. "I want every Earth ship accounted for, civilian, military, independent. I want timestamps, routes, logs now." Wells turned to the Assembly members. "They're not attacking our ships anymore. They're attacking our name." The Alliance released a statement within hours. Their broadcast, slick and perfectly rehearsed, showed one of their diplomats standing in front of a translucent star map with Rackin 7 glowing red. Tragedy struck today as the Rixan orbital station suffered a massive explosion, claiming thousands of lives. Early evidence suggests tampering with station fuel cells traced to an unregistered human ship docked prior to the event. "We ask the Earth government to cooperate fully in our investigation. Transparency will be the only path to peace." It sounded like a request, but it wasn't. It was a trap, because cooperation meant submission. It meant allowing Alliance investigators onto Earth soil, into Earth systems, into Earth's command. And if Earth refused, guilt by silence, guilt by defiance. Wells stood before the Global Command Council less than 24 hours later. He didn't flinch, he didn't stumble, his voice was clear, unshaken. "Earth did not attack Rixan 7th. We condemn the loss of life, but we will not allow grief to be weaponized against us. He held up the data pad, the hull fragment they found. It doesn't match any known Earth registry. Not just unassigned, completely fabricated, wrong serial code. Formatting, alloy blend inconsistent. With our fleet, this wasn't a mistake. He paused, letting the words hang. It was a message. The council erupted into overlapping arguments. They'll demand more proof. They'll say we're hiding something. This could lead to sanctions on all Earth trade vessels. We're running out of friends out there. Nari stood up. Then we stop asking for friends. We start showing them the truth. 2 days later, the full forensic report was completed. The ship part found at Rixan 7th was a forged duplicate, a near-perfect match for Earth's sovereignty markings, but using older font styling that hadn't been in use for 9 years. Small detail, but one that couldn't be faked by someone inside Earth Systems. Wells released the report publicly, broadcasted it galaxy-wide. He ended the transmission with only one sentence: if we were guilty, we'd stay quiet. Instead, we speak not to the Alliance, but to everyone else watching. It was a gamble, a message not aimed at their enemies, but at those in the middle, the unaligned, the silent, the scared. On the mining moon Jever, where laborers worked under long, unpaid contracts, the report sparked quiet riots. Workers painted the EarthQuest on machinery and demanded independence from Alliance middlemen. On Korai, a station known for journalism and open data leaks, several whistleblowers came forward claiming that Rixan investigation was politically engineered. But on the core Alliance worlds, silence. The narrative was already locked in. Earth had grown violent, and the Alliance moved fast. Sanctions were doubled. All human cargo ships were banned from Alliance ports. Earth's interstellar banking systems were frozen. Embassies in 4 systems were shut down. They didn't call it war, they called it containment. Inside Earth's Global Council chamber, the mood was crumbling. One representative shouted, "We're losing the galaxy. People are turning on us." Another fired back, "Because they're afraid of becoming us. We made them look weak." Wells said nothing. He stood at the far end of the room, looking at the flags. Overhead, every continent, every colony, once fractured, now trembling again. General Nari approached him afterward. "We're holding, but barely. Morale is slipping. Border colonies are reporting blackouts, rationing, and if they hit Luna next, they won't," he said. "Not yet." "You sound sure?" "I'm not, but they need us angry. They need us to lash out. Second we fire, first they win." He nodded. "They want war on their terms." Meanwhile, Sentinel, Earth's internal AI, picked up an anomaly. A series of identical phrases appearing across dozens of civilian messages routed through unrelated channels. Earth has changed, maybe not for the better. We deserve answers, not slogans. We were safer when we were part of something bigger. It was psychological manipulation. Seated dissent disguised as concern, more dangerous than bombs because it sounded reasonable. Wells met with his communications director, a young woman who had studied neurolinguistic programming. "This isn't a message," she said, showing him the analysis. "It's a virus. Each phrase is designed to build doubt without sounding radical." "How many systems infected?" "Nearly all public terminals, some private ones too. social boards, news, tickers, even navigation prompts. He exhaled, they're laying the kindling. For what? He looked her in the eye. For the fire they're going to blame us for. And then it happened, a human freighter, off course near Alliance Space, was blown apart mid-transit. The official story, Earthship violated restricted territory, no warning given. No survivors. The pilot had veered 30 km too close to an Alliance listening post, navigation. Records later revealed the star charts had been tampered with, showing a false course. The AI assistant on board had been updated with the wrong data just days earlier. It was subtle surgical murder, wrapped in procedure. And now the galaxy had its proof. First, Rixen, now this a pattern, a justification. The Alliance Senate held a vote within 48 hours. The verdict: Earth was to be officially designated high-risk entity. Open conflict was not declared, but Earthships could now be fired upon without warning in disputed space. No trial, no negotiation, just fire. Wells gathered the Earth Assembly in an emergency session. For once, no one interrupted, no one argued. They just listened. They've taken our name, they've twisted our message, and now they're positioning themselves to strike first and call it justice. He walked slowly across the chamber. We have stood without bowing, we've faced the worst of their silence, but now the storm is coming and we have to ask ourselves something. Do we stand ready or do we stand alone? A silence. Then a voice from the crowd: we won't survive alone. Another voice: then let's not be alone. Heads turned. It was Representative Hal from the Mars colonies. One of the most moderate voices. She continued, we've waited for others to come to us. Maybe it's time we go to them. Wells raised a brow. You're suggesting what exactly? Summit a secret one. Reach out to the unaligned, the doubters, the ones who haven't taken a side. Show them what's really happening, not just proof. Purpose. Let them see the Earth that chose to say no, and why we still stand by it. It was bold, it was desperate, it was the only move left. The summit was named Ashlight. It would be held on a drifting science vessel in unclaimed space, shielded by ion storms and cloaked satellites. Representatives from neutral systems, independent colonies, even former Alliance members were quietly invited. No weapons, no press, no Alliance eyes. Only one rule: speak freely. If Earth failed to convince them now, then no truth would matter anymore, because war was already at the door. The Ashlight Summit wasn't held on a planet that was intentional, too vulnerable, too visible, too easily destroyed. Instead, it was set on a vessel drifting through the ion-choked void of the Lyrian expanse, a place so remote even smugglers avoided it. The ship, a repurposed science vessel called the Lantern, had been outfitted with cloaking tech, shielded comms, and dozens of automated decoys scattered through the region. Only invited ships could find it, only those who wanted to hear the truth. The attendees arrived slowly, a delegation from the Vindri Archives, keepers of suppressed history, a group of rebel merchants from Delta Cygni who had once been sanctioned for refusing to install Alliance approved software in their navigation systems, a silent envoy from the Cloudborn, a gas-based species that communicated in frequencies most species couldn't hear. They hadn't taken a side in 1,000 years. Even one of the Dranthi elders came, cloaked in glimmering cloth and watched by a silent, honor guard. They came not because they supported Earth, but because they had doubts, and doubt, Wells knew, was the beginning of revolution. Wells stood before them, dressed not in a uniform but in plain black, no medals, no crest, just the earth behind him, slowly rotating on a transparent display. He spoke without notes. We didn't come here to beg. We came because the war they want isn't just against Earth, it's against choice. He turned, letting the silence speak. Before his next words, we said no, not to peace, not to cooperation, but to compliance dressed as diplomacy. And the moment we did, we were labeled unstable, dangerous, a threat. Now they want to erase us, not with bombs yet, but with reputation, with isolation, with lies. He stepped forward, gaze firm. We've made mistakes, we've fought among ourselves, but every scar we carry is ours, and we won't trade those scars for silence. The room was quiet. The cloud-born envoy let out a long, deep tone, almost like a sigh. Then the Dranthi elder spoke. I've heard many speeches in my time. Yours is honest. A pause, too honest. Wells didn't smile. I don't care if you like us. I care if you see what's coming. Just outside the Lyrian expanse, hidden behind one of the iron storms, a sleek black ship watched. No insignia, no beacon, no crew, only an artificial intelligence. It listened, waited, and when the signal was confirmed, when the lantern's coordinates were triangulated through a slip in one of the guest's nav systems, it sent a burst transmission to a fleet parked just beyond the system. Ashlight location confirmed. Proceed. With silent jump, phase disruption. The Alliance had known about the summit. They had planned for it, and now they were going to use it. Back on the lantern, Wells sat with General Nari and the Vendry delegation. Data streams flowed across the table. Archives leaked, reports intercepted. Comms. Proof not just that Earth had been framed for Rixon 7th, but that the same pattern of manipulation had been used for decades on other denters. The Vendry elder leaned back. They erased entire histories like this. He said, rewrote revolts as riots, painted massacres as security breaches. Nari nodded, and now they're painting us as terrorists, and if they fail, the elder asked, they'll stop painting, she said, and start firing. Alarms cut through the air, red lights, scrambled warnings, incoming vessels. Unidentified, no response, no broadcast. 4 of them, heavy signal disruption. Classic Alliance blackout protocol, no weapons fired yet, but they were here. Well stood. It's happening. The guests were rushed to secure chambers. Shields went up. Communication scrambled again to prevent trace leaks. The room darkened as the lantern's pilot activated emergency cloaking and decoy protocols, but it was no longer about hiding. It was about survival and exposure. They won't attack right away, Nari said, staring at the projected map. Why not? Because they want to see if someone inside does it for them. In the security chamber, chaos bloomed. A blast rocked the lower decks, not from the Alliance ships, from inside a bomb compact. Plasma core had been hidden in a supply container. 2 crew dead, 1 delegate injured. Automatic locks shut half the station down. Fire suppression kicked in. Oxygen was rerouted. They hadn't just been found, they'd been infiltrated. Who planted it? Wells asked as they moved toward the sealed safe chamber. A technician ran diagnostics on the Manifest logs. Container was marked as relief supplies. Origin traces back to Delta Cygni. Wells turned, the Delta merchant envoy. A tall man with ink-dark eyes was already in cuffs, 2 guards holding him. Down. I didn't authorize that, he shouted. Of course not, Nari muttered. You were just the cover. Wells stood over him. Who gave you the clearance code? The man's lips trembled. I don't know, I got a transmission. It looked official, said it was Earth sending backup supplies for the summit. I thought it was from you. Wells looked at Nari. They didn't need to speak. It had worked. The Alliance had planted a bomb, framed one of Earth's guests, and now stood outside in perfect position to rescue everyone from the threat. It was genius, horrific, surgical genius. Speaker came through. The Verican had been silent since the summit began, but now their transmission cut through the static. They will offer to intervene. They will appear to save the delegates. If the others accept their protection, Earth becomes the threat. Wells spoke fast. What do we do? You expose them in real time. Nari frowned. How? The bomb was rigged with a fail-safe, a memory shard inside the core. Every Verican design includes one, even stolen tech. You find it, you show it, now. Wells turned to the tech. Get me that shard, get me a live feed to every attendee's chamber. We do this now. 10 minutes later, the image played on every screen aboard the Lantern. The shard's data core decrypted. It showed the origin of the detonation. Command. A ping sent through a secure Alliance protocol embedded with a known diplomatic signature, not just proof of sabotage, proof of direct involvement. The delegates watched in silence. Then the Cloudhorn emitted a deep resonance, one of alarm. The Dranthi elder stood slowly. So this is their game. They create the fire, then offer the water. One of the Delta traders said quietly. And we were almost the excuse. Wells stepped into the main hall as shields still glowed red. They've tried to make Earth the villain. And they will try again, but now you've seen it, not in speeches, not in sentiment, in proof. He raised his voice. We said no, and they feared that no would become yours. He looked at each delegate. Make it yours. Outside the Alliance ships held position. They never fired. Not that day, because Earth didn't just survive the summit, it won. The fallout spread like solar flares. Within 2 weeks, 3 neutral systems broke diplomatic ties with the Alliance. The Vindri offered Earth unrestricted access to their archive network. The Dranthi began transferring resource routes away from Alliance trade lanes. The Cloudhorn, for the first time in recorded history, released a public tone burst translated to every language. We believe the humans speak truth. The Alliance didn't respond immediately. They couldn't. They had played their card, and Earth had not only survived, it had reversed it. What began as isolation was turning into ignition. Across the stars, new banners began to rise, some with Earth's crest, others with different emblems. But they all carried the same phrase beneath them: no more silence. Wells stood atop a platform on Luna, overlooking the stars. Behind him, construction crews worked on a new diplomatic station, not for Earth, for those who had no place in the Alliance. A place for the disobedient, the doubtful, the different. General Nari joined him, holding a data pad. They're moving troops toward the Vorus line, she said. Alliance says it's routine. He nodded. It's always routine until It's war. She looked at him. Do you think we can hold them off forever? Wells didn't answer right away. Then he said, we were never supposed to hold them off forever. He pointed to the stars. We were supposed to light the first fire.